All right, guys, welcome to Beard of Darkness Book Reviews. I have a really special guest with me today, Mr. Zamil Akhtar. I hope I'm saying that right.
Yep.
Sounds wonderful. How are you today, man?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good. It's 8 p.m. here in Dubai. The weather is great now. We're out of the hot days and the weather is like becoming perfect. Yeah.
Bragging.
Other than that, I've been busy with admin tasks whole day. Didn't get much writing done, but I'm doing good.
So, you work from home then?
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
mean,
I
of
work
course you
from
write at
home.
home, but you have a day job at home.
Yeah, everything I do is from home. So um, it's a double-edged sword because sometimes there's all these distractions and you can't get stuff done, but I don't have to go to the office, so I'm thankful for that.
John A. Douglas says, "May your writing hand never waver, your creativity never falter, your sales never trend down, and may your enemies do all three."
Oh, thank you so much, John.
And
Thank you so much.
that was one. I want to know where you got that from, John, because I actually believe you could have made that up too. You're a smart guy. Let's amen, John. Yes, I agree. So, wow, I knew that you weren't in the U.S. I didn't know that you did used to live in the U.S.
Yeah.
Massachusetts.
Yep. Western
Okay.
Massachusetts.
So if I'm right, that's kind of by Stephen King. Is Does he live around there?
I think he lives in Maine, but yeah, it's
Maine.
it's it's not too far. It's the same sort of vibe. Because I'm from like Western Massachusetts, so it's a few hours from Boston. It's like in between Boston and New York, but it's very suburban, and it's really like I wouldn't say it's rural, but it's in between suburban and rural a little bit.
Okay, yeah, because where I'm at is absolutely rural, and I have a really hard time saying that word because it's a kind of weird word. But yeah, I live at the beginning of the Appalachian Mountains in Ohio.
Wow.
So we're, you're always getting seafood though. It seems like. I mean, Massachusetts. Now you're in Dubai. I mean, are you a seafood lover?
Honestly, I wouldn't say I'm a seafood lover. I like fish and I like shrimp.
Okay.
What else do I like? I think those are the only two things I like from the ocean.
If I had an endless supply of crab and lobster, oh yeah, I'd be super fat. So
Yeah, I never got like accustomed to crab and lobster and oysters and
I'm
like
not
the
an oyster
milk
guy.
squid and all that stuff. It's like, there's like a whole bunch of stuff you can eat from the sea, but
It looks
never
like
developed a taste for it.
I couldn't have guessed the squid or octopus because I'm looking at one. I believe I haven't gotten into your books yet. I can't wait to. But we explain the creature on Gunmetal Gods.
I think they scare me too much. That's why I don't eat them. But
Oh,
yeah, like I mean, they look like aliens. They don't look like they belong on this earth, right? So I mean that's kind of why it's a Lovecraftian sort of symbol, right? And that's why it's on the cover of Gunmetal Gods, because Gunmetal Gods is all about that sort of Lovecraftian vibe, that Lovecraftian element. It's pretty hidden at first, but then it emerges slowly through the story. So I thought it pretty good, like, and fitting for the cover.
that's awesome, and that's something that I'm getting into myself. I've just started reading Lovecraftian authors. A recent one that is explained or described as a Lovecraftian author is Joseph Sale,
Hmm.
uh, indie author. I've had him on before. He's a really good writer, so I'm really excited to find out more about that realm, the Lovecraftian realm. So that was a big inspiration for you, the Lovecraftian
Yeah.
type writing.
Um, I think it's like a big inspiration in fantasy in general, but I think it's like you see it to different degrees. So in my story, it's like the Lovecraftian vibe is sort of infused into everything. So it's very Lovecraftian in that sense. And I originally was a horror writer, so for me a lot of the fun is putting the horror tropes in a fantasy story.
That's cool. I saw that you're a horror film aficionado. What would you say is your favorite? Do you have a favorite series or maybe a standalone movie?
Um there's quite a few. The Descent, that's like
Yeah.
a that I walked into that blind at midnight. I think I was with a friend and we just walked in to the theater and I was like blown away. So that's probably my all-time favorite. I'm also a big fan of Hereditary.
Oh yeah.
Um, yeah, that one is really good. And there's like a whole bunch. Like I can't
It's a hard
pluck all of
one.
them off the top of my head, but there's like so many great like
You did
classic Oscar.
very good by answering that, because a lot of the time if I ask a favorite movie or a favorite book, it takes a little while. I mean, it's hard. It's a really hard question, but that's why I
Yeah.
ask it, because what a more genuine answer than one you have to really think of like that. So tell us about your two series. The now Are those the only two series you have that you've published?
Yeah, so
Okay, I just
Gunmetal
want to make
Gods
sure.
and Lightblade. Yep.
Okay. Tell us
Yeah,
a little
so
about those.
so Gunmetal Gods is like a grim, dark fantasy series with it's set in a world inspired by sort of the Mediterranean and the Middle East during the crusading period. So it's 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 very action packed and it's got a lot of epic battles, and it's I sort of describe it as Arabian Nights meets Game of Thrones. So it's all in that, it's all got that vibe. And Lightblade is very different. It's a progression fantasy. It's more of a cyberpunk sort of science fantasy mix of ideas, and it's sort of hard to categorize because of that. It's really, I think, different from a lot of the stuff, both in its subgenre and in fantasy in general. So the series are kind of very different from each other.
I love that, because you're exploring, in my mind, as a person who wants to write eventually, if I'm going two different routes, does it feel different to you writing Gunmetal and the Lightblade series? Are they two different experiences for you?
That's totally different. It's totally different, and I have to sort of be in a different headspace depending on what I'm writing, and it feels like completely different.
That's cool. So you kind of know, okay, I'm feeling this way today. I think I can progress a little bit on this book or in this series today specifically.
I wish it worked like that, but it's it's more like I have to finish this book, so I'm gonna work on this book today.
Okay, no, I love the honesty. That's wonderful. So what has your publishing journey looked like personally?
Yeah, so I started writing Gunmetal Gods in 2019, and then the next year, when the pandemic began, I sort of finished completing the book and editing it, and I came up with a publishing plan and a marketing plan, and then I dropped the book on Amazon in October of 2020, and it was well received, and
Yeah,
I had no idea what to expect, and I was pretty surprised that it had been well received, and people were enjoying it.
you
And
nailed the
so,
name.
yeah, I think the name, when you're marketing a book, the cover, the name, the blurb, all this surface level stuff is super important. Like it's
Yes.
what gets people to the first page. So you got to nail that.
When,
I spent a lot of time, man. I spent a lot of time sitting there and typing up possible names for the book, maybe like 200 to 300
so
different
give us a
ones.
couple
So,
alternatives that you were going to go with.
oh yeah, the alternatives
I
are
always love
not
this.
nearly as good. There's Labyrinthos Whispers. So Labyrinthos is from the book. That's not a very catchy name at all. Then the other one was Gunmetal Graves. So it wasn't Gunmetal Gods, it was Gunmetal Graves.
I
But then I
think
realized I think someone else had used that name or something. So yeah, it became Gunmetal Gods sort of at the last minute as well.
I think
Uh,
that's wonderful.
yeah,
That's a cool story too, because you've got these names that, in my opinion, are not even close to as good as Gunmetal Gods.
yep.
When you hear that, it's triumphant, it's epic, captivating, intriguing. There's a mystery to why is this called Gunmetal Gods? Like, I can't wait to dive into it, and that's why I do. I love doing interviews, because I had obviously heard of you way before I got in contact with you. I don't remember where, but it was one of the big booktubers. And what I like to do is have a conversation with certain authors and you've got a couple series out. Right now in this conversation, it's hard to say which series I'll start with because they both sound really fun, especially Lightblade. That sounds super fun. But then it's like Gunmetal Gods too's right there, so I don't know yet. But I like to gauge it through the conversation. It's really fun. Let's see here. What was your inspiration for Gunmetal Gods first? I know there was some Lovecraftian.
Yeah. I think the final season of Game of Thrones was on, and I was sort of, I'd rewatched the whole show, and I've read like a few of the books as well. And so I had, like my whole headspace was consumed by that whole world and that whole story. And I thought, it would be super cool to have something similar, but instead of being inspired by medieval European history, it would be inspired by medieval Middle Eastern history. And so that's sort of where the idea for Gunmetal Gods began. And even some of the characters were I had Game of Thrones was in such a big part of my head. Even some of the characters sort of began, with from that inspiration.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I just, I discussed this idea with a friend one day, and we both thought it would be really cool. And then I just went home and started writing it. So yeah, it just sort of germinated from there, and yeah, it took off.
That's really cool. What about Lightblade? What was there anything in particular that said, yeah, that's the premise of I'm going to make in Lightblade?
Yeah, that one is a little more difficult to pin down because it sort of just started writing it. I had finished the second Gunmetal Gods book, and I wanted to write something very different and something that's less dark, a little bit more hopeful. I don't know, just something as sort of a palette cleanser, and that played with different themes and different sort of character interactions, and maybe it was a bit more lighthearted even. So it's sort, and that's sort of why it's like so different from Gunmetal Gods in every way. So it sort of started as just, and I'd had, like, I enjoy cyberpunk and I enjoy science fantasy, and I always feel like there should be more science fantasy books out there that sort of combine the tropes of science fiction and fantasy in unique ways. So it just sort of started as me sitting down and just writing stuff that was on my mind, that and I was in a headspace where I wanted it to be really different from Gunmetal Gods and just
That's
not
cool.
the same at all.
Yeah, no, I like that because I can understand, even just as a reader, you go from a really dark story to maybe you want to you love both, of course, but there's time for both also. There's those times where you want a palate cleanser, and there's a time where you want to get really into a story that is dark. And me, I personally love a dark story. Timothy Wolf says Gunmetal Gods was one of my very first indie reads. It was confirmation that indie at its highest level is the same quality as the best of traditional publishing.
Thank you. That's
a compliment.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Timothy.
Yeah, that was wonderful. And I have to agree with him. Like when people hear indie, and I think that's changing now. It used to be, oh, it's subpar. No, it's just done differently. And gosh, there's so many wonderful writers, and Timothy's absolutely confirming you're one of them. That's awesome. I'm sure. How long have you been writing? How long did it take to master that craft that you're still, on your journey with?
I've been writing all my life, but I think I only started taking it seriously when I started writing horror short stories. This was around 2016.
Okay.
So I started writing horror short stories for Reddit, and I wrote the first one like just on a whim, and people enjoyed it, people liked it. So that's kind of when I realized, I can maybe write at a professional level. So yeah, it hasn't been too long since I started taking it seriously and didn't consider it as just a hobby.
That's really cool. Man, to take that leap to say this is what I want to do professionally, and it's such a specified craft to it. It's not something that anybody can just pick up and do overnight. It takes lots of work and research and practice. So it's very admirable. Um, what's who are some authors that you would say have their hand in the way that you write today?
Yeah, I mentioned, of course, Game of Thrones, George R. R. Martin.
Yeah,
I think when I read those books, um, just a lot of the way he paces the story and a lot of the way he characterizes and describes things, a lot of that rubbed off on me. Then we've already discussed Lovecraft, and I still go back and I still read Lovecraft, even stories that I've read before, because there's something that there's like some unique world that he has access to where he can pull all these bizarre ideas, but and put them on the page and make you digest that bizarreness and that otherworldliness and that you know cosmic
yeah,
horror. And he has a very unique ability to do that, so I always go back and try to read some of the stories because I feel like I need to understand how he did it. And in a lot of cases, like, all I can say is that it's like it's impossible to understand. You just have to try and do it, basically. And then I think the other author I'd mention is Saladin Ahmed. So
ooh, that's a new one for
he
me.
writes like, yeah, he writes like Middle Eastern, and or he's writing comic books. I think he's writing Spider-Man now, but he used to write more Middle Eastern inspired short stories and novels. So that was a big inspiration for me, the way he was able to, you know, take that, this part of the world and the history, and make it into like a fantasy world, and put it on the page. So um yeah, so
Okay,
he's
I
a
have
big
to grab
influence.
this book because this guy was an out of the blue influence on me. I
Oh
didn't.
yeah.
Gaurav Mohanty.
Yep.
Are you a fan of his?
I haven't read the book. I've heard a lot of great things about
I've
it.
learned so much Indian culture. I was blown away. I'm still learning, and I haven't read on this. I'm like three-quarters of the way done with it. It's one of those reads. If you have you done a Malazan read?
I've read part of the first book. I think I put it down,
It's
so I haven't like
yeah. So it's one of those
progressed too
slower
far.
reads. It's if you try to read Sons of Darkness and all of well, for me, I was very ignorant to most of the culture and chakras, lots of the lore in this that has a lot to do with Indian lore or Indian culture. But I keep learning from it, and it's a wonderful copy too. It's like
Oh wow.
the
Yeah, that's super cool.
yeah, it is.
The broken binding one, yeah.
Yeah. So that's I keep coming back to culture when I speak to people. Even in, I'm in Ohio, even if somebody's in Michigan or Pennsylvania, we're different in some way. And I think that that's the coolest thing. When I heard that you lived in Dubai, I had to ask about it. Of course, what do you do there for fun? What's your favorite thing?
Oh yeah, that's a good question. Dubai, a lot of like comedians come here. A lot of there's a lot of concerts. There's a lot of stuff going on. So, and it's usually not too expensive. Like, I know ticket prices in the States are out
Yeah.
of control, but here you can get all this stuff. You can
My
go
wife didn't
for
believe
pretty
me.
reasonable prices.
I said, listen, Dubai, by US standards, as far as the US dollar, it's cheaper there to do things.
Yeah.
And I showed her, you guys there have the biggest building in the entire world, right?
Yep.
What's the name of the building?
Burj Khalifa.
Wow, it's huge.
Yeah,
But I showed
it's
her the
ridiculous.
city. It is, and I can't imagine like looking up at that, from the
Yeah.
ground by it. But I told my wife, I said, it's cheaper there. We should go. Plan a vacation. She said, there's no way that it's cheaper there. I said, I'm going to confirm that. And look, we just did.
There are like certain things are cheaper here. Um, Definitely going to events and stuff is way cheaper because for some reason in the states there's like a whole scalping
Oh,
scalper epidemic going on there, where here it doesn't really happen. So that's a lot cheaper, but some things are a lot more expensive here. Like probably food is pretty expensive here and stuff. But you know, it's definitely worth a visit. And uh, like you know, there's especially these days, like when it's winter in the states.
hmm.
Over here, like the weather is like perfect. Like it's unbelievably good.
You swim a lot?
So no, I don't swim.
Okay.
But there are beaches here, so you know it's like a beach city, so you can go to the beach. Uh, yeah, you know
It
it's
looks
pretty happening
beautiful.
place.
And if you
Yeah,
look at if
absolutely.
you look at an aerial photo of Dubai, it's just you think it's a fake photo first. I said, "Babe, this is a real photo." She didn't realize that wasn't like fake CG. It's like, no, that's real. It looks exactly like that. It's the way that it's structured. It almost kind of looks like it's like a what do they call it? The island of Dubai.
I mean, it does look like a cyberpunk sort of city,
It
and you
does.
know they keep like putting like the buildings aren't just the skyscrapers aren't just skyscrapers. They all have some like unique sort of twist to the design. So there's like a building that's like a twisty building. It like twists in the
Hmm.
middle, and then there's all kinds of there's like a building that's like a mirror. So it's like shaped like a mirror.
Huh.
So they keep coming up with like these absurd
Hmm.
ideas for the buildings. So that's why when you look at like the skyline, it looks like you're in like a cyberpunk movie basically.
That's so cool, man. And just look out your front door, I guess, for inspiration. That's what I see in my head. Do you have a writing process?
I think my writing process is to, you know, I wake up, you know, I sit at my desk and I usually tell myself, okay, I'm gonna get a minimum of 2,000 words done today. That's usually my minimum. And so the main issue is for me is to focus and to get those words down. So sometimes you need like focus aids. So like one focus aid I use is the Pomodoro method. So that's
Hmm.
when you do like 30 minutes of focus and then you take like a 5 minute break. And then you do 30 minutes of focus and then a 5 minute break. So in that 30 minutes, you cannot like do anything else. You have to like just focus on your task. Like you can't check your email or, you know, get up and like get a drink or something. You just have to sit there and focus. So that sort of helps me to get stuff done because my big problem is just little things distracting me. And
Yes.
when I get those like 2,000 words done, then I might try to go. You know, I usually try to go longer. I'll try to push myself, and sometimes I'll get up to like 7,000 words, and I'll be
Wow.
really happy. But you know, it's also important not to burn yourself out. So I try not to like overdo it as well.
Um, I believe it was Joao Silva. I hope I'm saying his name right. Told me of the same method he uses. Would you say the name of it again?
Pomodoro method.
Okay, Pomodoro.
Pomodoro. Yep.
Because I believe he said there's many renditions of it. I think he does like
Yeah.
15 minutes and then 5 minutes, or some rendition. But I think that's a really good idea, considering I'm like you. If I hear anything, I'm gone. As my
Yep.
attention span is just totally gone. So E.O. Montague just bought Gunmetal Gods. Can't wait. That's really cool.
Yeah. Hope
Um,
you love it.
yeah, good guy he is. Um, when you're not writing, well, I guess we kind of touched on this a little bit. When you're not writing, what other hobbies are you involved in? I know you go to comedy clubs and stuff like that. Is there anything we missed?
Um. Yeah, that's the thing. You know, when writing was a hobby, I would say that's my hobby. But now writing is my profession. I mean, I think I want to say that I'm a, you know, I mean, I enjoy playing video games. I enjoy gaming, but even that, over the past few years, it's gotten like less and less and less and less. So it's
Yeah.
like now I'm kind of on the hunt for like a good hobby.
Okay.
Um, and it's and like and that's important to
It
your
is.
productivity and to your process, because when you're not writing, whatever you do should help you sort of recharge your batteries, and should be sort of stimulating. So I'm kind of on the hunt for like something to do when I'm not writing, and I still haven't I,
Found it
I
yet?
still haven't found that yet. Now,
So I read you have a pet rabbit.
yeah,
That's awesome.
I I had a pet rabbit.
Oh,
So
had one. I'm sorry.
yeah. So what happened was s- starting from last summer, I started getting sick. So I started like getting asthma, and I started getting allergies and all this stuff. And I had
Mhm.
no idea what was causing it. And so I went and I got allergy testing done and everything. And eventually it was determined that it was the rabbit causing
Oh,
it. So I had this rabbit for 7 years, and then
wow.
I suddenly developed an allergy to the rabbit. So sadly, we had to rehome the rabbit, but we found an awesome home for him where he also has like another rabbit is living there, so he has a friend. So it turned out I was very it's very sad to because I raised the rabbit from when he was a baby.
Yeah.
So it's been difficult, but uh,
Yeah, it
I'm
sounds
happy
like
like
it.
that he's in a good home. So
Yeah,
yeah.
that's inspirational, man. I'm sorry that had to happen, but you found him a home and he's got a buddy, right?
Yeah.
That's really
I
important.
think that's good, because when he was living here, he was by himself, and obviously we were there to play with him and stuff. But so uh,
Yeah,
the weirdest things can happen. Like you just get allergic to
spontaneous
something,
things.
and it's just life throws these sort of curveballs at you.
It does, and you don't
Um,
expect it. It's like
yeah.
why all of a sudden did this happen? But I hear examples all the time of stuff like that. Eo Montague also says, "What has your attention right now in your writing?"
Oh yeah, that's I- so right now, like I'm trying to write the fourth Gunmetal Gods book. I'm also sort of prolocating ideas for Lightblade 2. And the thing about me is every book I want it to feel different from the other books I've written. So with Gunmetal Gods 4, I'm trying to um most of my ideas, I don't want to spoil anything, but most of my ideas are that I'm trying to introduce are cosmic horror ideas. So I'm still sort of on that in that cosmic horror mindset, but I want to take it to a new place and to a place that the previous books didn't go. So if you've read like for readers of the Gunmetal Gods series, they'll know that every book has gotten more cosmic horror-y
Okay.
than the last book. So that trend is continuing, and I'm like, that's sort of what's occupying my mind is how can I like really take this to a interesting place. Let's just
So
say,
there's the Gunmetal Gods, Conqueror's Blood, and Elder Apok. Am I saying that
yeah,
right?
I don't know how to pronounce that word
I
either.
don't
So
either. I know the definition, but I yeah, exactly. The when you go to your website, and I have it posted below. Gosh, I always like to make sure I spelled everything right. Go when they go to and sign up for your newsletter. What is the name of the novella, and how does it tie into that series?
yeah, so if you sign up for my newsletter on my website, you get Death Rider. So Death Rider is a prequel novella to Gunmetal Gods. You can read it in one sitting, and it takes place 15 years before the events of Gunmetal Gods, and it follows a completely different character in a different conflict that is related to the conflict in Gunmetal Gods. So it's mostly a war story, but it's also very very cosmic horror. So like it's perfect for October, for Halloween.
Oh,
If you
okay.
want like the horror vibe, it's a great book for that.
Ooh, that's a good catch because it is October. I
Yeah.
encourage everybody to go check his website's wonderful. Very well done. I hope to be able to do websites this well, because that's what I'm doing right now a little bit. Also, I'm doing some
Oh,
author
cool.
websites and taking pointers and little things that stick out to me as I go along. So wonderful website.
Thank you.
Yes, of course. So let's see here. I've already I always send a list of questions because I like to go on my own a lot, but they always kind of inspire my own questions, if you know what I'm saying. As far as writers go, what would you say? Not your favorite writer, but maybe one of your favorite tropes, maybe one that you don't use or one that you do use. Just your favorite to read, I guess.
For me, I think I like stories where there is a. I think I think this is very common, but I like when there's different points of view and they're all sort of fighting over the same thing. And there and I like when there isn't a lot of room for characters to resolve that conflict in like a peaceful way or in a satisfying way. um where they can all just live happily ever after. So that's also a reason why I like A Song of Ice and Fire so much, because they're all fighting over the Iron Throne, for example, and
Mhm.
only one person can sit on a
Sure.
throne. And Gunmetal Gods has a lot of that stuff as well, where characters are fighting for the same thing. And I think what that highlights is often when you can have characters when when they have the same goal, you can sort of see how their values differ and how their approach to to gaining that goal differs. And that's sort of how you can characterize different characters differently, and you can open up a lot of like interesting like dynamics in a story. um yeah,
I
that's something like when I see that, I'm hooked immediately. Succession, if you've seen that TV show, that's another one that does that
No,
really
I
well.
haven't, but I've heard wonderful things. Maybe that's the next because I really enjoyed Wheel of Time. I haven't read all the books, but I'm really enjoying the series, and I don't even care if people are like, "Oh, it sucks." No, I love it. So guess what? You know, but that's probably the next one I watch. Succession.
Succession, yeah, I highly recommend it. It's
Now that's is that HBO or
yeah, it's
HBO?
HBO.
Awesome. Give us one. Gail Monte says, "Give us one book we need to read, and one you can't wait to read."
So I highly recommend Three Body Problem if you like cosmic horror, because it's like a sci-fi cosmic horror, and I recommend you read the whole series. Uh, I read the whole series like I think 2 years ago, and it sort of it made me reimagine the whole idea of cosmic horror.
Wow.
And I don't want to spoil it, but it's like maybe the best cosmic horror series I've ever read. And in terms of can't wait to read, man, you mentioned it earlier. Malazan. I I'm I'm definitely gonna right now. I'm trying to get through Berserk, so
Oh,
I've got like the whole. I bought the whole series basically.
that's
So
huge.
I'm like on the ninth volume or something. So I'm getting
Oh,
through that right now, and it's
I hear
super
it's like
cool.
eternally dark.
Yeah, I love it, man. I
That's
love it
cool.
for that because it's unapologetically dark, and it doesn't care it doesn't care what your threshold is
It's gonna
for
push it.
darkness. It doesn't care. Like it does what it wants basically.
I
So
love
I
that.
really appreciate that. Yeah, and
It's a
it's
sentient thing. It does what it wants.
yeah, it does what it wants, man. It'll go places. It'll go where it wants to go, and it doesn't care how horrified you are.
Wow.
And it has good character work as well. I'm finding it really like it's really it's sort of in the same vein of Gunmetal Gods, in the sense that it's a mix of um it's a mix of like really dark cosmic horror, dark fantasy tropes, as well as like political intrigue and war and all of that stuff. So it's right down my alley basically.
JCM Byrne, I remember when we did our interview, he had a stack behind him of the Berserk copies. I don't remember what volumes, but he says it only gets better from where you are. and
Yeah,
Malazan is awesome.
I had to buy them on Amazon or on Kindle or whatever the comic book. I forget the name, comics or whatever. Um, but those deluxe sets look so good. Like,
That's why I thought you was talking. So when you get them on Kindle, is it got it's pictures or whatever? Or can you buy?
yeah,
I've never bought a Kindle comic book or whatever.
yeah, I forget the name for the app. There's a comic app that Amazon has, and yeah, I just read it on my tablet basically. Look, it's fine. I did buy the first volume in the deluxe edition, and it was super cool. But the availability is not like, here in Dubai. It's not like easy to get them all. So I didn't want to get like the first and then the fifth and then whatever.
Yeah.
Either I get them all. So I got the first. So, but either I get all the rest or none of the rest, and I'll just get them on Amazon. So I didn't want to like wait around. So
No, that makes sense.
I just bought them all. Yeah, on the app.
And as far as accessibility goes, I have to say myself, and I'm almost ashamed to say it because I love a physical copy, but I never thought that I would like the Kindle, and I'm really enjoying it. It's, as an adult with 4 kids and a bedtime and all that fun stuff, you find it easy to grab, and you can, like, my wife, she'll be up at night feeding our newborn, and she doesn't touch a physical book anymore. And she's also one that was like, I'll never buy a Kindle. She's like holding the baby and she can't hold a book. So she's holding the Kindle. And that's her one and only rule. She's like, yeah, I need a Kindle. She bought one immediately once we had the newborn. She said, I can't hold a book to get tired after she's been awake for an hour. So I guess I'm plugging Kindle right now, and no, they are not paying me.
I mean, yeah, it's I remember back in college, I'd just lug around like backpack full of books, and
Heavy.
like, yeah, I mean, it's books are great, but the convenience of Kindle is hard to beat.
It is. Technology.
Nice.
Where will it take us next?
Yeah.
I bought the Berserk graphic novels as they came out, so I have all 41 or 42 stacked up. That's a lot.
Now, that's awesome. I just don't have space. I have like no space for it also. So like if I buy like a physical book, I have to be sure like I really want that physical copy, because like I have no space on my bookshelf, and then like my books are just like piling up like on another table. Like, so yeah.
You should see my desk right now. I wish I could show it to you. I guess I could, but then I'd lose my camera. But yeah, stacks of books. Half of them I haven't read yet that I plan to read, but it's always good. That's what, like, if I ever, well, of course I'll get old, but like when I do get old and my kids are in school or whatever, I'll have plenty of stories to read, right?
Oh yeah.
My man DB Rooks here, just tuning in to talk to some cosmic horrors. Do you find inspirational from the big man, H.P. Lovecraft?
Oh yeah, we talked about this, but I'll say that H.P. Lovecraft, like whenever I go back and I read his stories, and I, there's just something special about them, and it's so hard to like reproduce, because there's so many movies based on H.P. Lovecraft stories, and I don't think any of them really get to the heart of the horror that you feel, when you read his stuff. So it's like, even in the books I write, like in the Gunmetal Gods series, I'll take inspiration from the different entities. Like, obviously everyone knows Cthulhu, but there's like so many other ones, and I can't even pronounce the names, to be honest. Like Nyarlathotep, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. And there's like a bunch of other ones, and like, and I enjoy like going online and going on like the Lovecraft wiki and like reading what are the differences of the different entities, and like why did he write these entities, like, because they each sort of represent like some boundless idea of horror.
E.L. Montague asked, what is your favorite Lovecraft? Do you have a specific story from his, or I know he comes out with big what do you call them, full of like short stories. Anthology?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, you can you can download all his stories for free because he's in the public domain. So for anyone who doesn't know
Wow.
that, yeah, you can get every single thing he's written for free. So don't, I mean, unless you want to buy like a really nice collector's edition, I wouldn't even bother spending money
Oh,
on his
wow.
stories because it's all in the public domain.
What does that
So
mean, public domain?
it means it's free basically, and it also means that if you're an author, you can actually put, if you want to take like a Cthulhu, you can put him in your book because it's in the public domain. There's no, it's not
Oh,
like copyrighted. So that's why authors, they can, in some stories, Cthulhu himself shows up, and it's
oh,
like,
wow.
because it's in the public domain, and that's actually a great thing. Um, I think, you know, like in my stories, I've I've sort of taken some of the Lovecraftian entities and like Nyarlathotep, for example. I've taken him and I basically put him in my story, uh, and it's in the public domain, so it doesn't, it's totally fine, and it's and it works. So it's yeah, so it's very cool, and
That's
it's
interesting.
it's great that you can do that.
Yeah, I had no clue. And I just wanted to specify for maybe I didn't understand necessarily the public domain at first too. But it's just so for instance, if somebody wanted to take you up on that and go download his stories, where would he go to do that?
There's a library website. I forget what it's called, but there's like a online library site where you can download like everything in the public domain.
Okay.
I think you
I
could
have to
find it
Google
if
it.
you do a Google search, but like everything that's in the public domain is there, and you can download like the EPUB or something, and you can
Excellent.
get it onto your e-reader. So it's like, sometimes you see them for sale on Kindle for like $10. I think that's just like some random guy trying to make a buck and putting public domain stories for sale.
Huh.
But it's completely unnecessary to pay to read Lovecraft,
Yeah. Yeah, that's
unless you
really
want
good
to
to
do
know.
like an audio book or something. Then you might have to pay for the audiobook because like someone took the time to narrate it.
Thank you for letting everybody as well as myself know that, because I wasn't aware of um his stuff being free. That's wonderful. Can you imagine 75 plus years after you die that your writing is still one of the biggest influences in your genre? You
I mean,
know?
there's the common sort of story that Lovecraft, when he was alive, he wasn't very like well regarded. I don't know how true that is. I think there's truth to it that he wasn't nearly as big as he is now. But I find that kind of, if there is truth to it, I find it kind of sad, um,
Yeah.
because it's sort of fitting too. It's sort of fitting as well for a person like him.
I understand
Uh,
what you're saying. And if you watch
yeah.
him, I can understand why back then, because things were way different as far as acceptance goes.
Oh yeah.
He may have been thought of as evil or
That makes
crazy.
sense. Yeah,
But
I don't. Yeah, I. But I think it's his fame now is well deserved, um, and it's for me. It's still like a bottomless well where I can go and like, because my mind like normally is pretty normal. Like I'm not thinking about these weird things. So
mhm.
I need like something to get to pull me in that weird zone. So
No, that's
reading his stories
absolutely
does that.
makes sense, because I don't think as a human, I mean, there's a I'm sure acceptance, but to gain that inspiration to a place that you don't know that you want to be makes perfect sense. Like the bottomless well you're speaking of. You know that if you dive into his mind, his work, it's going to pull that inspiration out of you as a person, and that's really cool that you found that and that you know where to go for that, because some people search for that for a long time.
Yeah, it's really important. Like you can't, because when you're writing, you need some input. Like it's like you need like nourishment to write. So if you're not reading that sort of stuff, like I'll sit there and I won't know what to type. So it's like, at least for me, it's important to have that like nourishment.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And I think that a lot of writers that I've spoken with and that are watching could probably agree, relate with that. Um, so I always make sure that I get every one of your links that you're active on or that you want people to have. So could you give us some of your social links, and then where can we find your books? And there's people from the UK here and all that. So let's hear them all if you.
Yeah, my books generally are sold on Amazon, so you can find them there.
Okay.
Um, and as for me, yeah, I'm on Twitter, I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram. You can find me there. You can interact with me on any of those platforms. I'm on Reddit as well. Yeah, so I'm.
A little bit of
And
everywhere.
if you want to get on my newsletter, go to my website. You'll get Death Rider for free. So yeah, that covers it.
That's awesome. I'll have all those links in the description and when we finish. Let's see. I like to make sure there's some. So Eon Montague says, "Is there anyone that you think Beard ought to interview?" That's actually a really good question. Who do you think I ought to speak with?
That is a good question. I think in the let me think. Maybe in the indie space, you could get Rob Hayes. That might be cool because he's got a
Well,
big series that he's launching, and
yeah,
I kind of want to know more about why he decided to write a 9-book, like 3-arc with 3 separate trilogies, a trilogy of trilogies. I want to
yeah.
know what
Well,
inspired him to do that. So you should
tune,
like get to the bottom of it.
tune in on November 10th because that's when
Oh,
he's on.
nice. Yeah,
Yeah.
make sure you like figure out like what inspired him to do that. Like,
Oh man, I can't
'cause
wait to talk to him about the Kickstarter.
yeah, I need to know like why he decided to go that like intense and that deep into like a single world.
Now I've never backed it. Like there's the infamous, the famous Brandon Sanderson secret books or whatever, his projects. And I didn't get into fantasy early enough to really know that much about the Kickstarter when he was doing it. But guess I definitely got in there on the Rob J. Hayes one. That was my very first Kickstarter, by the way.
Nice.
So I'm really excited to get it. I did the hardcovers. So yeah, I think that'll be really cool to hear about. I forget the name of the world. I have to look that back up because he released the map, I believe, in the little Kickstarter updates. But I always like to make sure that there's a time at the end where I ask you if there's anything that you'd like to highlight that's coming up for you or that we haven't spoken about.
Well, right now I'm just in the middle of. I'm in like the middle of the writing ocean, so I'm not seeing land anytime soon for the books I'm working on right now. But I do have a big announcement coming soon.
Okay.
So I cannot say what it is, but
I like that you're
something big
hinting towards big,
very
something
soon.
big coming. Yes, that sounds amazing.
Yes.
Well, when that does come up, let me know, and I'll shout out from the rooftop about it on all of
Absolutely.
my videos and all that fun stuff. But
Absolutely.
yeah, that sounds wonderful. So, guys, I really appreciate everybody stopping in, and more so, I appreciate Mr. Zamil Akhtar stopping with me to chat about what we love.
My pleasure. Thank you so much, man.
Of course. I do have, I like to I've gotten some really good pointers lately that I should talk about my next interviews, and I just remember what it is. It's tonight, Mr. Michael Roberti. That'll be 9 p.m. EST. So if you guys want to tune in then, we'll be here. And again, thank you so much, not only for writing books, but for coming on my channel and speaking with me.
Yeah, my pleasure, man. It's been awesome. The crowd that came in to watch the interview was great. You were great. It was a good time.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you so much. And again, guys, stop in tonight at 9 if you want to watch Mr. Michael Roberti. And until next time, we'll see you later.